Hey everyone, it is Irene, Lyon here, and welcome to this entire world of nervous system health and healing. And today I have a guest interview for you with Courtney Townley of the Grace and Grit podcast. I've known Courtney, we've known each other for I think a handful of years now. I was originally on her show when she was starting out, and I believe that maybe her show that I was on was one of the first ever podcasts I was on. So we'll find that old episode and link it near this one. And I wanted to have her on because, first of all, she is trauma informed and nervous system informed via the curriculums that I have taught, namely Smart Body, Smart Mind. And we followed a very similar path in our earlier years, in our 20s. She was a dancer and a Pilates instructor. Of course, I was more in the skiing and figure skating world, and then exercise science. And her work revolves around coaching and helping folks, mainly women, learn how to be more accountable, more consistent within their health routines, whether it's through diet, exercise, lifestyle, you name it. We talk about one of her most favorite things, which is consistency, and the importance of having consistency, which, to be honest, is the same in my world. We need to be consistent with our nervous system health, just like our movement, our food, our relationships, our connection with nature, all those things. Near this episode, we will link all of her information, all the things she's up to. You can work with her directly. You can work with her within her groups and coaching programs. I highly encourage you check her out if you are looking for a little extra help and support in your worlds of lifestyle and nutrition and just being consistent with all that you do. Hi, Courtney.
Hi, Irene.
What's up today?
Oh, it's a cloudy day in Montana, but we'll take it. It's not snow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here with you, so that's all good.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell me, we're going to talk about stuff about routine and lifestyle and fitness and what you do.
Yeah.
But for those who do not know you,
Yeah.
tell
My
them.
name is Courtney Townley.
Yeah, thank you.
Like I said, I live in Montana. I have traveled a long journey through the wellness industry. It's really the only industry I've ever worked in, and it's looked like a lot of different things and has really led me to where I am now, which I always call myself a health and self-leadership coach. And what I do within that is I help women to reduce overwhelm and really just start showing up for themselves with more consistency and ease. It's like the most unsexy sales pitch there is. People are like, consistency, yay.
Yeah.
But I make it exciting because it is exciting when you think about all it affords you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what's your background? Like,
Yeah.
were you in, tell us.
Good, yes. So I went to the University of Michigan, and I was a dance major. I went there on a dance scholarship, and dance was a huge part of my life up until my mid-20s. And then, I got to a point where I thought, okay, this is great. I love it. It's my passion. But how am I going to put food on the table? Because, after graduation, you kind of have to think about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been doing Pilates for a while as part of my dance training, and I ended up going to a school in Toronto for a year, Stop Pilates, ended up staying to certified trainers for them for several years. And that was kind of my entry into the fitness industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a mover. So I thought, what a great gig to teach people how to move their bodies. And it was a great gig, except I really started to realize a few years into this that people were coming to movement practitioners because they wanted to feel better. Mm-hmm. And feeling better was not only going to be created through movement. And I was really at a loss for the other tools. I didn't know much about nutrition. I didn't know about the importance of sleep and hydration and the mind, and certainly nothing about the nervous system. So I kept my career in the fitness industry, but I started exploring other avenues. Mm-hmm. And ultimately went through precision nutrition, which is behavior change science, and did some life coaching work, and ultimately just kind of got to a place where I felt I was much better equipped to address the whole enchilada and really approach health from the perspective I think it really deserves, which is a holistic one, right? That we aren't just bodies, we aren't just physical beings. Health is a very multidimensional thing. It's also very dynamic. It's always changing. And again, early in my career, I completely lacked the skill sets to teach my students and my clients how to be prepared for a life of dynamic living, right? Both physically and figuratively. The fact that health is always changing.
Yeah.
So, through my path, collecting skill sets along the way to really be able to equip people now with those skill sets. Because I always say, right, that health really isn't like a once in a lifetime transformation. Life is transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And so as we evolve into new ages and stages, and as we carry higher and lower stress loads, how do we govern ourselves? How do we lead ourselves differently at those times? And nobody taught me that. That's an education I would have loved when I was young. And, of course, life has a way of just sort of teaching you what you need to learn.
Completely. I love what you just said about self-governing ourselves. Yeah. And I'm thinking about, we have a similar history, right? Fitness.
We do. Our dads are both veterinarians.
What? I didn't know that. Or maybe I did, but I forgot. No way. Large or small animal?
Large. Well, both. But my dad he specializes in large animal, but he does both.
Oh, hilarious.
Yeah.
Funny. Okay, there we go. So we had a very similar upbringing, maybe in that respect, with late night calls and all the things.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I was thinking about when you mentioned govern and health is not just a thing that we do once, it's like ongoing. Mm-hmm. I remember being in one of my first level exercise science classes. Yeah. I still remember the name. It was Kinesiology 143. I can't believe I remember that. 143. But it was about general lifestyle health. It was kind of that easy A class that everybody took. But there was this book that we had that had an image of a man, I think it was a man, in a ditch, like in a cave, two of them. And on one side, it was called sick health. And the guy at the top was showering him with pills, which were meant to be pharmaceuticals, right? And then the guy on the other side was giving the guy a ladder to get out of the cave. And that was, I don't even remember what it was called, but that was the opposite of sick care, right? Health, maybe that was health care, I don't know. But that image always stuck with me, even to this day, because like you, it's like, this is, okay, I need another piece, and then here we are.
Yeah, and I think that, the way I've always thought about it is that there's surface level health. There's kind of this shallow level of health. And that's really the space I came out of. As a dancer, you look at dancers and we have this idea that they are incredible athletes, but they also, many of them smoke like fiends. They have super interesting relationships with food, right? They're pushing their body really way past the point of probably what is healthy. So there's a lot of dis-ease within that life. And then what I was taught in terms of caring for my health was all just very superficial, right? It was all how I looked, and it was maintaining a certain weight, and it was how much I exercised, and those types of things. And what, again, I learned over my life journey so far, because I know there's more to come, but what I've learned so far is that deep health requires so much more, right? It's really an inner journey. It's the stuff that nobody can see. It's stuff that we can very easily hide, but how you feel in your body. And that's what I really try to encourage my clients to focus on, is less thinking about the body and more being in the body. And what is that experience like?
100%. And I think one of the things we want to talk about soon is consistency and a few other things. And I wanted to have you on because I no longer do the fitness, the nutrition coaching that I did for so long because of the other things I'm doing now. And you know about these things.
You're a busy lady, yeah.
But I know that there are many who want a coach, a guide who is nervous system and trauma informed, which you completely are. through the work you've done through me, through Smart Body, Smart Mind.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks who say are living with chronic illness, if we just lump that in, they are not well. And I talk about the importance of exercise because we need to move and get our bodies going. And then there's this chasm, I'm not well, I'm stuck at home because of this chronic illness or whatever it might be. Irene's saying we need to exercise. How do we get there?
Yeah.
Right? So if someone was to come to you, so first of all, I think you do group, or do you also do personal?
Yeah, I do work with clients privately.
Okay.
I do also have a community, which is where a lot of my work happens.
Mm-hmm.
So we have sort of resource vaults where people can pull from if they need
Yeah.
some guidance in terms
Yeah.
of like specific things. But I do a lot of coaching inside the group because, even with movement, and this is such a long way from where I started, I used to be very specific about exactly what people were going to do. Right? I'd give them the program, I'd send them away, and then we'd reevaluate.
Right.
And I think that there's still probably a time and space for that, depending on where someone is at in their healing process.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, I know for me personally, coming out of the dance world, moving really heavily into the fitness industry for a long period of time, I think that dysregulated my nervous system in a big way. Because I wasn't addressing my whole self.
Yeah.
I was just addressing pushing harder, getting leaner, again, the surface level health pieces.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think that it depends. And this is, I always say it depends. It does depend.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the person. Mm-hmm. It depends on their experience. Mm-hmm. It depends now, thanks to you, to their level of trauma, right? And where they're at in their nervous system. Mm-hmm. And it depends on the dosage, right? In order for me to sort of give them any kind of advice of how to move forward. But I will say that I think we greatly underestimate the power of just simple movement.
Yeah.
This movement pollinated through the day is just as effective in terms of keeping the human body healthy. Like, does it build robust muscle tissue? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But does it keep the lymphatic system flowing and, the torsion on the bones and the muscles happening and, the chemistry in the brain, keeping that thriving? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so that's really kind of ground zero. If somebody is coming in and, the idea of even going to a gym or setting up a space in their home is like, nope, it's not happening.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
How do you like to move your body? Right? And you're so great at this, even in your course, like just exploring, like really starting to pay attention to the body and really exploring what it feels like to be in a particular joint or in a particular place. And I think that is such a beautiful entry into rebuilding trust with your body, which you kind of need if you want to move on a more intense level. I think also when you've been injured, this comes up a lot, right? We get injured. I'll never forget. I was at when I first met Ido Portal, and I kind of trained intensely with him for a while. But I went to Singapore to train with him for 2 weeks. And part of our training was this sort of acrobatics class. And I'm not a gymnast, but we were in a safe environment. We had the pads and the cushions and the cueing and the spotters. But somehow I flipped over backwards, and instead of landing on the mat, I landed on the floor.
Ouch.
On my neck.
Ouch.
And I was almost 40 years old. I mean, I wasn't like this spring chicken.
Yeah.
And so after that, the fear, like my nervous system was very alive in that moment, and in the aftermath. And I remember asking one of the teachers, like, how do you go back to that kind of movement when you've been injured in it?
Yeah.
And, you always use the word titrate. And I always use the sort of the phrase, the state of whelm. I don't know if you're familiar with Susan David's work.
No.
She wrote Emotional Agility.
Okay.
It's a brilliant book. I try to encourage all my clients to read it. But she talks about how the human body or the human brain, it likes to be challenged. But if you challenge it too much, it shuts us down, right? We create too much stress, the nervous system freaks out, and nothing good happens. But if you're under challenged, we stagnate.
Yeah.
And stagnant places are where things go to die, not to thrive. And so she talks about finding your state of whelm, which I try to carry across all of my work. Any of your commitments, whether it's movement or it's nutrition or it's trying to get more quality sleep, how can you go into that with premeditating your state of whelm? And another way of kind of thinking about that is like on a scale from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Are you like 80% sure that you can execute that fairly easily?
Yeah.
And if you're not, then it's probably too hard. Right? So back to your question of how would I introduce somebody back into a movement practice?
Great.
For some people, honestly, it has to start with visualization. Right? It might start with just rolling around on the floor in their bedroom or their office. It might be walking their dog. And then just over time, as they continue to show up for themselves and they push the envelope just little by little, they start to build what you always call capacity.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the capacity allows them to take on bigger challenges down the road.
Yeah.
So I think that's, and I think that I'm a much better trainer in that regard because of the work that I've done with you.
Yeah.
Right? Because of really, Susan David's work absolutely is so brilliant. But I think really the practice of embodying what it's like to enter what feels like unsafe spaces, we have to enter because otherwise we can never heal it.
Yeah.
And yet, how do we enter in a way that we feel safe and we feel a little bit challenged, but not overwhelming our brains? And I think that's an art.
It's a complete art. And I loved what you said, to pollinate the movement throughout the day.
Yeah.
Just before we pressed record, we were just catching up. And I was mentioning to you that my lovely knee that has been my teacher for the last 20, well, really it's more like 26 years when it was first injured, if not more, has been flaring a little bit since January. And being someone who thrives on vigorous physical activity and loves it, when this occurs, I can't.
Yeah.
And so, today and yesterday, even though I desperately wanted to walk out to the ocean, I sat on my deck and just looked up to the sun to get some light, which is important in the morning. And I just moved my arms and bent and twisted and did all of the things I would teach if I were working with someone who didn't have that capacity to be vigorous.
Yeah.
Does it drive me a little bonkers? Yes. And then that's where I have to, it's okay. It's okay, Irene. Like you still have working kidneys and a digestive system and a heart and your brain's there and you're a bit pissed off that you can't go and do these things.
Yeah.
And we'll figure out a solution for this in due time.
Yeah.
And I know that for many, when something like that hits them, they won't continue to move. And my sense is, and I'd love to hear your thoughts here, not so much because they don't want to, they just haven't considered that they could sit on a chair in their living room and do some weird movements with their arms, mainly because they maybe were never taught. And if I, and if I think about the times where I am somewhere in public, like the airport, which hasn't happened in a while, but let's just pretend that time when I was in an airport and I'm about to get on like a 10-hour flight, I will be on the floor rolling around. I don't care how dirty it is, because I'm going to be sitting on that little chair, only able to walk down the aisles and not even put my arms out. So I'm moving, and I remember seeing this one woman saw me, and you could tell she was a little envious.
Yeah.
And in order to break the ice, she made a bit of a joke, like, "Whoo, well, you look like you're doing some really cool acrobatics or something, or yoga," or like she tried, like, I'm just moving a little bit, and then her and her husband went and they just sat and waited for the flight, and she kept looking at me.
Yeah.
And if I was just doing yoga, I wouldn't have been talked to, because that's accepted.
Well,
right?
And she could label it.
Yes.
Right? She could put it in a box.
Totally.
It was within her like comprehension of what exercise or movement is.
Yeah.
And the only thing that put that in that box is our conditioning.
Yeah.
Right? We were born into human bodies.
Yeah.
How amazing is that? And they are, of course, one of I always say our birthright is movement.
Movement.
And it's really interesting. When I was a Pilates teacher for many, many years, and really had to teach at like this kind of the strictest level because I had other trainers observing me all the time.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get outside the parameters of the rules.
And there were a lot of rules.
So many rules, Irene.
Yeah.
And the reason I ultimately left Pilates is because as a dancer, I got to the point where I felt like I wasn't moving anymore. And that is actually around the time I met Ito, who was like moving all over the place and all the ways I was told not to move. Yeah. And so going back to what you said is, somebody who maybe is injured and it's not that they don't want to move. It's just that they may not realize that there's other possibilities. Yeah. They might also be trapped in some all or nothing thinking.
Yep.
Right? Because I hear this from a lot of my own students is that, well, a little bit is not worth doing.
Oh.
And it's like, well, really? I mean, so it's interesting. I think it was yesterday, I was doing the video in your aggression. I think it was an aggression video. And it was all about the facial touching.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. Like that's movement. Right? Yeah. I'm moving and I'm creating that fluidity in my face and releasing the tension. Yeah. I felt so different within just a few minutes. And I could do that anywhere. I could do it on a plane. I could do it on a train.
On a toilet. Yeah.
Yeah, I could do it anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit goes a long way.
For those who don't know who Ito is, just tell a little, who is that man and what does he do? Because his movement is incredible, and I know you've studied with him. Just give him a little plug.
So I'll tell you how I found Ito. So Ito Portal's a movement teacher. That's what he calls himself. And I found him because somehow I came across a YouTube video years ago. And it was these CrossFitters who were kind of talking about CrossFit and nutrition. And they were interviewing Ito, and you could tell that they were not getting necessarily the answers that they were expecting. Because, Ito's whole philosophy really is that, well, one of the things he told me that I love is that we all come into the movement space from a different place. You were a skier in your youth, right? I was a dancer. Some people come in through martial arts. Some people come in, however you come into that movement cloud, we all enter it. And once you're in there, we start to see that movement is endless, right? I mean, as a skier, it would probably be really beneficial for you to do things in your training that are not skiing.
Of course.
So taking a dance class, doing some yoga, going for a run, because all of that is going to help balance out the training that you're doing through your skiing. So Ito really just started to like blow my mind with something that I feel like I innately already knew, which was movement is my birthright and no movement is wrong. And wherever your strengths are, it's probably not where you need to be training. So when my first experience with him, he brought together athletes from all over the world. And within a day, you knew where every single person's weakness was, right? So the dancers weren't great at powerlifting. The powerlifters had no rhythm. The martial artists, struggled with, I don't even know what they struggled with, but everybody had their thing. Yeah. And his whole, sort of objective was to expose that, to say, this is where you work. So we expand our movement possibility. Yeah. Which is not how, like when you go to the gym or you see people running on the street, like most people are really fortifying where they're already strong. Yep. But where we grow as humans is exposing the weakness, right?
I like that. And that's very interesting because if we think about, if I bring this back to sort of human development, if you take that perfect scenario where baby comes out, they're healthy, they're full term, we want that kiddo on the floor. Yeah. Not in a device. Right. Not even in a crib. I know some, I understand sometimes you just got to do it because of whatever. But
And naked? Like they're not bound by anything?
Yeah, naked or maybe a little something that isn't, but our baby live videos, that if anybody hasn't seen those baby live videos who are listening to this or watching this, be sure to watch those. We'll post them near here. This little baby that we filmed over about 18 months on a hardwood yoga floor at a studio. Every month we filmed her just playing and rolling to the point where she was crouching up to almost stand, not quite. And it's so interesting. Some of the comments that we get are, you shouldn't be putting that baby on a hard floor. It's going to hurt themselves. Mm-hmm. And I go, I don't get mad at that person because most people don't know. And our first learning experience it's through our body. It's through our movement, how we move our eyes, how we roll. And the Ido Portals of the world who teach that, they know that. And I mean, he's Israeli, as was Dr. Feldenkrais, right? Yes. So there's a something in that era of culture where it's like, let's explore, let's play. But what I find with, you mentioned the runners, the people that are just good at what they do at the gym, because I watched this, being in the gym environment, teaching and training for like 15 years. It was robotic. And if you asked anyone to try to do a specific movement on the ground, like crawl, for example, or even just roll over with softness in the spine, it's not that spine couldn't do it. Yeah. But there was no patterning, no wiring. Sure. And some of the developmental stuff that will come up when someone gets into that slow rolling, feeling the face, the eyes, it can bring up, as you've learned through Smart Body, Smart Mind, for example, massive early trauma patterns where they were disallowed to move and explore. And all I know is that degree of freedom, the degrees of freedom that we have access to in our bodies, it's infinite.
Infinite. And, I think one of the big things that, really helped me to shift my brain around so many things, but one of the big ones was that strength training is a doorway. It is not the end point. No. It is a doorway to more movement capacity. It is not a means to an end. It's not like the thing that we just do forevermore and that's all we do. The same reps, the same exercise, the same dosage the rest of our life. What can you do with your strength? What does it allow you to express in your life that you can't express without that strength? Right? That might be more movement for sure, but it also might be like bolder moves in your life in other areas because you feel you have more integrity in your structure.
Yeah. When I look at some of your videos, and you're very good at handstands,
which was a learned thing, yes,
of course. But I've never been able to actively get to that, and yet I've been able to, and I can't now because I'm a little deconditioned. But in our Feldenkrais training, I was doing flying in the air, flying into judo roll moves. Yeah, and I think back, and I'm like, wow, I learned that in a day at a workshop. And so the next time we're together or when we meet in person, I'm like, for sure, you're going to teach me how to do a handstand. Yes. But I also know the titration to that takes time. Right?
A year. Like I was a broken, like if you saw handstands for literally a year, you would have been like, wow, Courtney, like that it needs work, Yeah. And even after a year, I think I could hold a handstand for maybe 10 seconds. So it was, going to this consistency conversation maybe, but before we go there, I did want to say this, that lack of movement. So I have a 12-year-old son. Yeah. And, he goes to public school. It's a lot of sitting. And he's a mover. Like that kid, I know all kids are, but he is like, it's definitely a nutrient for him. And when he was younger, and even still I see it in him some days where he comes home and there is aggression, not towards me, but
No.
he's frustrated. He's,
Yeah.
irritated, and he needs to get it out on something. So my husband bought a punching bag, for
Nice.
the garage,
Yeah.
just so he could play with it. And honestly, it shifts his demeanor really quickly. And he's a great kid. He's a very kind
Yeah.
kid. But there was definitely always this kind of inner turmoil that was happening. And I think a lot of it was because of the focus,
Yep.
the hours of focus and the lack of movement.
The movement. I so agree. I mean, we could talk about that for hours, but the bottom line is we need to move.
Yeah.
It isn't about necessarily how much. Of course, we know, and I've done other videos about the importance of having aerobic capacity and muscular strength.
Sure.
One could say that if you have a goal, have that be a goal. And I will share a story. When I was in fitness, one of the downfalls or pitfalls, I don't know what the right word would be, but people would trap themselves by picking a goal like, I'm going to run this marathon. I'm out of shape.
Yeah.
And there's a marathon on.
It's always a marathon, Irene.
Always a marathon or a triathlon.
Yeah.
What about hiking a mountain, but again, people are comfortable. They understand that, right? Oh yeah, I totally know what a marathon is, or a 5K run. And maybe someone would do that. They would be motivated to do that, because if they don't, they're not going to finish.
Yeah.
So it's a push of external reward. But what I often found was that would not satisfy the criteria of them creating a lifestyle habit of bringing movement and physical activity into their daily life.
Absolutely.
And it was similar to the jocks in high school. Maybe you saw this, is the people that were really fit and really dedicated to their sport and kind of were revered in some way, at least here in North America they are. You would see those folks at the 20-year reunion, and they'd be so out of shape, unwell looking, because the structure kept them active, as opposed to wanting it intuitively.
100%.
Is that making sense?
100%. There's also that element that I'm such a big proponent that health is really managing your total stress load. And stress comes in so many forms.
Yeah.
One of them being exercise. So you can push yourself really hard to train for a marathon, but a couple of issues with that, if that's the only form of movement you're doing, is number one, you tax your system, and a lot of people don't understand the recovery that goes into that kind of endeavor. And they're not adjusting other parts of their lifestyle accordingly. When you push harder physically, you need more recovery, hands down.
And nutrition.
Yeah. So, and exactly what you said, I think it also, people, they're aiming for a destination, which is the race. And then when the race day's over, it's like, oh, it's done and dusted,
Yeah, I can finish. I can stop.
Yeah. So I always love the saying that health is really a direction we travel in. It's not a destination we arrive at. Right. It's like, and we're going to get off trail. I get off it all the time.
And that's important because, again, in fitness, I saw this, and I want to parallel this even to my students, your students who are in our courses, programs, not working on fitness, but there has been a very ingrained dogma, if you will, that if you mess up a little bit, stop. Might as well just quit, right? Or if you don't pass the test and get the flying color, I must suck at this.
Yep.
And I think that goes back to this idea of titration, lifestyle. It's not just one goal, it's just living. Talk to me about consistency, because that was something that you said is one of your favorite things, and it's also can be very boring.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Very
it's
boring.
one of my favorite things in that I think it's so misunderstood.
Yeah.
I think
me
we
about
think
your
consistency, and it's like we think I have to do the same thing in the same way for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
That's what people think when they think consistency. But I think really consistency is three things. It's definitely a mindset, right? You have to be able to parent yourself, parent your brain, allow yourself to experience emotion if you want to stay the course with anything. Because there's going to be days you don't want to do it. There's going to be days it's really hard, right? All of those things come up. So I definitely think it's a mindset. I say it's a mindset also because we have to be good at failing. We have to be good at messing up and sometimes not succeeding and not making that mean we suck as people, right? Or that we're broken in some way.
Yeah.
It's just a learning opportunity. And I feel like that sounds very cliche, but it really is.
It's a complete learning opportunity. And for those that know that when they fail, there is a very deep shame spiral that puts them into that, depression, for example, just giving an example, that's okay. And the reason I say that is, again, it goes back to the baby, that development. If we were not allowed to fall and be okay, just the other day, where was I? I was with my husband, Seth, and we were somewhere and near a playground or outside. And this little one was maybe just pre-walking and exploring. And the dad was over there and crawling a little bit and then got up, walked, and then poof, fell. Yeah. And the thing that a kid does is they look up to see, should I be crying? I don't know what I should be doing. Of course, if it's really bad, they will go into full cry, red face. That's different. But they were fine. Yeah. And Seth just looked at this little one and he or she looked at him and he said, oh, you had a little oops there. Not a bad thing. It's just like, oops. And then kind of looked for dad. Dad came over, was totally cool with it. That ease of that little one making, it's not even a mistake. They just tumbled or stumbled because they're learning how to move, how that is interacted with in those early years. If that is done well, we come out with agency, and it's okay to make mistakes. But as you know, and as I know, that's typically not what happens in more Western culture.
Well, it's not what we've been practicing. That's for sure, right? And
so anyway, I wanted to add that in about when someone falls off the wagon of consistency. Yeah. There's lots of little factors that play in with that might be super deep, and we don't even notice them. Or know
for sure. So let's talk about realignment. But before we go there, I just want to say that what I hear in that description of that little kid is they just look at it as a neutral experience.
Totally.
It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. It's just a part of life. And so I just keep plugging away. And then that little kid doesn't ruminate about that experience for the next 6 weeks, 6 months, 60 years.
No.
Right? Unless I guess maybe they are trained to be that way or conditioned to be that way.
Exactly. And I think that's where, again, this is just my speculation and anecdotal evidence, is I think a lot of the lack of capacity for people to stay consistent and try something and not completely go into self-deprecating behavior when they have a mistake is a result of that interaction, that attunement, that either secure or not secure attachment. I'm pretty certain that that's where that comes from what I've seen. And then for the human adult to at least know a little bit about that can be very eye-opening. And then for someone like yourself who is coaching at that level to know that which you do, like, okay, well, and then we need to push a little bit. Because like you said, if you're not adding a bit of positive stress, we're not going to grow capacity.
Yeah. And really, my life has been such a testament that none of my learning has really happened in the clean moments where I was stable on my feet and executing everything just the way I planned and getting the results I was looking for. That is not where I learned. I learned by it all going the opposite direction. I was failing, I was flailing, I was on my face, I was, struggling. And so I trusted myself to figure it out. And I think that's a part of consistency. I know it's a part of consistency is building our capacity for self-trust. Trusting that we are going to not be jerks to ourselves when we mess up. And trusting that we may not know all of the answers, but we can figure it out. We can resource what we don't know.
Yeah.
We can, make some new attempts and try some new experiments because it's all an experiment, right?
Totally.
All of it. And I think as we lean into that and be really careful that whatever the outcome is, we're very judicious about how we label it. That's what helps us to stay the course. I always say, like, the curiosity is what helps us to keep showing up, but the judgment shuts us down real quick.
Can you give me an example of like a general, whether it's a vignette from a coaching session or in your own world where you've worked with that with someone or
People
yourself?
just wanting to like get like really judging what they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it comes off as it almost sounds like a factual statement. Like,
Right.
This is just who I am. Right? I hear that a lot. This is just who I am. Well, and I always say to that, well, it's just who you've practiced being.
Yeah.
That's it. And so if you want to actually change that, that's totally possible. We can make develop new practices. Or I hear things like, I'm no good at that. I'm not athletic. I'm not athletic. I'm not good with time. I've never been an organized person. So it's like we are fighting for this identity that we don't even like. That's how it shows up.
It does. And now I'm going to ask you about the ski experience.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you shared that story on your social, I was like, oh, that's a good metaphor.
Yeah.
On the pommel lift. So tell everyone about that. And then we'll go into the next pieces of your pieces for consistency and steps with clients.
So I was probably, I don't know, I was young. I was maybe somewhere between like 6 and 8. I don't know. But a part of my childhood was in Colorado and we would ski all the time. My parents were divorced, so my dad would always take us on these ski trips. And I don't remember what hill we were at, but Colorado is awesome to ski at because there's so many resorts within a very short distance of each other. So at one of the resorts, there was, I didn't even know the name of it until you told me, a pommel lift.
Yeah. Pommel lift.
But it's basically, you take a regular chairlift up, and then to get to the very top of the mountain, we had to put this little disc between our legs and put our skis in the perfectly carved out tracks and sit on the disc to get pulled up the hill. And my dad was very clear with me, that Courtney, if you fall, you have to let go. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, but he, drove this home with me. But and see this, I'm going to do what my clients do. Yes. I'm a stubborn person, right? That's part of my identity that I'm arguing for, even though it doesn't serve me.
Totally.
And so I, of course, fell off the disc. I kind of leaned to one side and just toppled over, and then literally was dragged to the top of the mountain because I refused to let go.
Yeah.
And so by the time I got there, I was distraught and I wanted to go home and I was embarrassed. I mean, so many things, all because I wouldn't let go. All because I was determined to do it a certain way, which clearly wasn't working.
Yeah.
But I was hell-bent.
Do you think another reason, because I've definitely been, like the T-bar is the other thing that you can ride.
Yes.
And it can be a little scary to let go because it's a steep hill and then you're worrying that you're going to hit the people behind you.
I think I had anxiety for so many reasons because it was new. I'd never done it before. And then you're in front of all these people, right? People are waiting, people are on the side, like people are everywhere.
Yeah.
And then, yes, like the fact that I was always trying to be perfect at everything and, not mess up. I was that kid. So I think all of that drove exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Right? Because I wasn't centered. I probably wasn't focused. I was probably over tensing parts of my body that didn't need to be tensed up.
Yeah.
And then, and then I just made a painful event. I made myself suffer for it because I refused to let go.
Okay.
And how often do we contribute to our own suffering? We make it worse than it needs to be.
Yeah.
Because we don't let go.
Exactly. So talk to me about that. Like, in terms of letting go, what are some things that you see? Yeah. And I know we had asked, or I had said, it'd be great to bring in a little bit about the dieting world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the dogma.
For sure.
Like, what are you so passionate about right now? Because it seems like that narrative is always shifting because there's always a new thing, a new fad, a new diet.
Oh, yeah. So one of the conversations I have on repeat with my clientele, because I do really work with kind of that population, I would say between, the ages of 40 and 70. That's the bulk of the
Mhm.
community that I work with. And largely women.
Mhm.
And what often happens in the beginning of working with somebody is it becomes very clear very quickly that they're trying to return to something they used to be.
Mm.
And they're trying to use methods that never worked in the first place, but because their girlfriend, their mother, whoever, right, is having success with that thing,
Yeah.
they have a lot of conviction that that should work for them.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of belief that I think people struggle to let go of. Who they are, what they're capable of, what health even is. Like health in my book is not returning to something, it's expanding into something.
Mhm.
Like it's ahead of you. It's not
Yeah.
behind you.
Yeah.
And yet we're trying to get back to the pre-baby weight. We're trying to get back to how we looked on, with the wedding day. I mean, these are the things. And so I do really see that women often will struggle to improve their health as long as that's what they're using for the driver.
Right.
That's their pommel lift. Like they
Totally.
won't let
Yeah.
go.
You got to let go. You make me think of, I caught a conversation in one of our forums a little while ago about body changing size
Yeah.
as we get more regulated.
Yes.
And I have probably put on 2 to 3 sizes.
Yeah.
And I'm not, it isn't fat weight.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting. If I were to try to get into a pair of jeans that I had 7 years ago, they wouldn't go across my thighs. And yet I look at my thighs and I'm like, they still look the same. But I do know, like the bra size, I hardly ever wear bras,
Mm-hmm.
but the tissue, the breast tissue is actually less, but the cavity of my ribs, the bones have gotten bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, to me, it's a direct relationship to capacity. Have you noticed that at all in your system?
Oh, 100%. And I
Because
think
that's a mind screw, right? With someone who's worried about size. I have to be a size 6 or whatever.
yeah, because we're conditioned to believe it's all about getting smaller. And
Totally.
I'm a big believer that for many, many women, capacity, both sort of in the nervous system and also structurally, like physically, when you build muscle mass, you do expand physically,
Yeah.
right? And the capacity, like the things that I had to do, and I'm still doing, I'm still learning to do to heal my nervous system.
Yeah.
It's a lot of slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of listening and not dictating to my body.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of choosing to pull back rather than push hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's not necessarily the case for everybody, but I always say, like my husband's a carpenter, and when he has a client who says, "Oh, I want to have this like special thing in my bathroom, can I do it?" And he'll say, "You can have anything for a price." And this is how I feel like about leanness on the body.
Yeah.
You can have anything you want for a price.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I talk a client often through what that price might look like,
Yeah.
they often get very clear that that is not a price they want to pay because it's going to cost them things in other areas that they really care about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is really important too, is we often don't question how we define health at this age and stage of life. And when I ask a woman that question, I never get a weight on the scale. I never get a clothing size. I never get like, I want to look hot at my high school reunion.
Right.
What I get is I want to be able to trust my body to show up in a powerful way for all the things I care about.
Yeah.
And I want to keep up with my kids and go on adventures as I get older. These are the things I hear. And so expanding our capacity physically, nervous system wise, right, which is a part of that physically, emotionally, all that expansion allows us to build more resilience and more integrity in our body.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's, again, there's a price to pay for leanness, and it's interesting. Somebody said to me the other day too, they were like, Courtney, if there was a famine, who would be the first to die? They're really lean people. And yet we glorify this, don't we?
It's very odd.
It's so
and to be
interesting.
clear, that there is healthy body weight,
Of course.
which I know is accurate, and I know it's very controversial right now. But we'll just leave that one to the side.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting thing, because I go to the grocery store, as I'm sure you do, and
I do.
There are the magazines. Usually it's the drugstore, and it's like 10 ways to do this and 5 ways to burn off fat with this herb. And my sense is there are people, probably not the ones finding you, but there are people who do want that size, that do want that look. Sure. And that's cool, right? Yeah. But it's also chasing something that is not internal. Mm-hmm. It's external. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, where you and I have a lot of crossover with our work and what we do. Tell me about Base Camp.
Yeah. So I think this goes along with this dieting conversation, is that I find a lot of people have spent years, decades, an entire lifetime making self-care and let's call it what it is. It's not even self-care, it's weight loss. Yeah. Right? The focus of their life. Yeah. And so I don't really teach weight loss. If anything, I'm going to talk about fat loss for people that's an appropriate conversation. Yep. But the way that I come at health is from 4 different angles. I come at health from the chemistry angle, right? We want our blood sugar to be stable. Mm-hmm. We want to be getting good sleep at night. We want to have a decent amount of muscle tissue, these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. We also want to have a healthy mindset. Mm-hmm. And we want to be able to expand our capacity for emotion, right? Have emotional agility. Yep. And we also want to have healthy strategy. How we organize ourselves, how we commit, how we set boundaries. These are all equally as important to the health equation, because without those things, you're not going to show up with any degree of consistency. So yeah. And so to me, these things are base camp for life. If we can at least build some proficiency with these skill sets, we can get to the real work of our life, which is the things that we're here to, I always say, cause, contribute, and inspire, right? Like, what are you really here for? What do you want to be here for? What do you want to create? Yeah. What do you want your legacy to be? That's your work. But we spend so much time hyper-focusing that this is our work. It's just about healing the body, where it's like, no, healing brings us, it's base camp. Yeah. It makes us resilient enough. And again, structurally, with enough integrity and enough strength that we can make that climb. Yeah. So I think sometimes I do think the diet industry feeds into this, that it's like, if you're not on a diet, if you're not doing some new exercise program, if you're not on that new supplement or that whatever the new thing is, it's a problem. And it's like, well, no, if you feel like you are in integrity, you're feeling at peace with how you're showing up in your life, get to the real work. It's an identity thing too, I find. Yeah. Is, there are many who will stay unwell because they've only ever been unwell. And it's an identity. I am this, or I live with this. And it's a real conundrum that often people don't know they're in. And so with the identities of, I am this kind of diet, I am that kind of, I'm a CrossFitter, right? And it's like, okay, great. But you're a human, and your name, if you want to go that, me, this is something I've been working with our students with, like, this is you. You are not that type of diet or that type of exercise routine. And I do agree that our job here is to create, to contribute. Yeah. We could say to serve. Yeah.
But you're right. There is this hyper focus on health, and health is important. So it's
Of course.
it's an interesting paradox, isn't it? Because you can get so focused on health that you forget that there's this whole other world,
Yeah.
and it
Well,
can be also the other way around.
and think about what base camp is. Like you go to Everest, they're at base
Yeah.
camp to acclimate, to like
Yeah.
literally get themselves to a place
Mhm.
where they can make the climb.
Exactly.
And so it's really important. Base camp is no joke.
No.
You have to condition just to get to base camp. You
Mhm.
know? It's kind of like the conversation we were having around strength training earlier. It's not the
Yeah.
end point. It's just the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
It's the entry. It's the doorway.
Yeah. Love it. Is there anything else, my dear, that is like on your wish list for sharing with folk?
I know we spoke to this a little bit earlier, but I think just reiterating that I think the work that both you and I do in different ways is helping people to rebuild that self-trust.
Yeah.
So you can make strong choices in your life
Mm-hmm.
and also trust that no matter what happens, you have the ability to experience any emotion all the way through without suffering.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful, like, what if we really embraced that? Like, how would your life look different if you were willing to experience any emotion all the way through and you trusted yourself to figure it out and you knew you were going to be kind to yourself when you messed up or when you didn't do something that you said you would do?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, what do I need to eat or how much more do I need to exercise in order to change myself?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think that the bigger work is the self-trust piece so we can really lead ourselves in our life.
Definitely. When you were talking about self-trust there and the emotions, I often will say emotions are neutral by design.
Yeah.
And it can be a bit of a what? What do you mean? Because there are still so many in the mind-body industry and coaching industry calling anger a negative emotion,
Yes.
for example.
Yes.
And I don't know how that memo hasn't gotten out yet that anger is actually really important.
Yeah.
Not violence,
Yeah.
not hate,
Yes.
but healthy aggression, boundaries. This is me. This is my thing. No, stop that. Push forward. But we got a lot of work to do, I think, to teach that these are neutral by design, but they will feel big depending on the circumstance. And the
Yes.
bigness is okay.
But it's what we make the bigness mean that hurts.
Yeah.
Right? It's what
Right.
kind of makes it worse than it needs to be. And one of the exercises I do with a lot of my clients is
Yeah.
I will ask them the question, like, for you to follow through with whatever commitment you just made,
Mm-hmm.
which is titrated. We make sure it's, reasonable.
Very good. Yes.
But in order for you to follow through with it, what do you think some of the emotions are going to be that you have to feel that you're going to have resistance to?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And of course, we come up with like frustration or irritation or just discomfort. These are things that we don't really want to feel.
Yeah.
And so then I do an exercise with them of, okay, let's just pre-decide. When discomfort shows up,
Yeah.
what are you going to make it mean?
Yep.
When frustration shows up, what are you going to make it mean? Because you're right, it's totally neutral until you color it.
Mm-hmm.
So what color are you going to color it? Yeah, I love it.
Perfect. That's a great place to end. I love that visual. And one more time, tell folk where they can find you, what kind of things you're offering in this nervous system and trauma-informed coaching style that I know you do, which is why I want people to know about you.
A couple things. Number one, the podcast, which you've been on like a gazillion times. I think you're the
Thank
most
you.
frequented guest I have had on that show, which I just love so much. So the Grace and Grit podcast is a great place to just sort of hear more about the philosophy of the way that I work. And then I also have, it's kind of a robust offering, but it's so good. And it's called The Healthiest Year Yet. It's a 5-part video series, and it talks a lot about the things we talked about here in terms of like, what are some practices that we can start tapping into to build that trust and to start leading ourselves more powerfully. And I promise you, it is not like exercise and diet oriented, although you may decide that that is something that you want to focus on in some of the exercises. It's definitely not the point of it. It's for you to choose what health means to you at this point in your life, and how are you going to start sort of organizing yourself and managing your brain and experiencing emotion so you can show up in that way.
Great.
Yeah. So you can find that at graceandgrit.com/healthiest year yet. And I'll give you the link so you can
Great.
put it in
We'll
places.
put that near here. Cool. Yeah. Anything else that you're cooking up in the year to come? We're in the year 2022 right now.
Yes. I feel like I was in such a rhythm of so much production for so long. And now it's really just sort of fine tuning and drawing people into those spaces and places. In the fall, I'm offering a consistency code. It's a course I've been teaching for years, but I do kind of a crash course on it, and that's always really fun. So if people are on my email list, they'll get notification of that. And we do that for a really small fee. It's not very expensive. And I teach workshops all the time, and I let my subscribers know when and where those are.
Great.
But
cool. So get on your email list, everyone.
Yes.
And you do offer still private work. So
absolutely.
There you go. If you guys need a coach, and I'm going to say again, nervous system informed, trauma informed, which is important.
Yes.
For diving into these deep patterns. Courtney is your gal.
Yeah. And I so appreciate everything that you have helped me to better understand. And it kind of appalls me now, knowing what I know, that how little I knew when I was, when I had the responsibility at a very early age of helping people in the wellness space, because this knowledge it really is so important.
Me too. We're in the same boat.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we're here now doing it.
Me too.
All right, sister. Thank you so much.
Thank you.